Okay. It's still lagging. I don't think it's lagging anymore. Hopefully it's not. I think we're good. I think we're good. So, let's get to here. Okay. So, we're gonna be watching a little bit of history today. So, let me plug in my thing. Come here. Just gotta make sure that I'm not lagging, because if I'm lagging, that's up.
Cute videos of, new families, a young couple, and they have a baby, and they have a puppy, and the puppy and the baby are playing together. Yeah.
Okay.
The most diabolical human experiment.
Let me hear it. Let me hear it.
The child and the ape experiment. Have you ever seen those cute videos of, new families, a young couple, and they have a baby, and they have a puppy, and the puppy and the baby are playing together? Yeah, the ape and the child experiment is basically the worst possible version of that. This experiment takes place in...
Okay, why would the parent, like, get an ape in the first place? Like, that makes no sense to give the child an ape. I mean, I don't know, because have y'all seen that 911 call where it's like the ape is like ripping off the friend's face or something like that? That shit was scary. It's crazy. It scared the fuck out of me when I was a kid.
1931. It was conducted by a young couple, Winthrop and Luella Kellogg, and they recently just had a baby boy named Donald. And when Donald turned 10 months old, he had another sibling, not a brother, but a sister. However, this sister was not biological, or even related by species. This sister that he was given was a 7-month-old chimpanzee named Gua. Winthrop Kellogg was a psychologist who specifically worked on the psychology of animals, primarily dolphins, rats, and birds. And him and his wife decided that it would be best to take their work home and to up the ante by not only experimenting with a chimpanzee, but also by effect their own child. The couple planned on documenting this entire experiment that they were about to begin. And the specific point of this experiment was to study the environmental influence upon early behavior. Which, what that really meant was they wanted to see if they raised a baby and an ape the exact same way at the exact same time, if they could get a similar outcome. And
why wouldn't they just do it separately, though?
See where this is going. It's speculated that they initially thought that this experiment would be relatively harmless, and that their child would simply be a baseline to refer to when it comes to early education. And only the chimpanzee would be tested on, because only the chimpanzee was being treated differently, right? The child hanging out with a chimpanzee wasn't going to be affected by this. Well, I won't spoil it, but it wasn't fully accurate. Interestingly, the Kellogg's thought they were doing the moral thing, because initially they actually wanted to test the opposite. They wanted to see what the effects of having a child grow up in the wild would be. But because it's extremely dangerous and unethical to leave a baby in the woods, they're like, why don't we just take an animal and put it in a human condition to see exactly how smart a chimpanzee can be and what their true natural potential would be if they were raised as a human.
What the
when you
fuck?
put it in that perspective,
who comes up with this shit?
Almost kind of seem logical, right?
That doesn't seem logical
after
at
Donald
all.
and Gua were introduced, the tests began. And over the next 9 months, there was full-time grueling tests taking place between Gua and Donald to see exactly how a baby chimp and a baby human would compare and develop, as they were both being treated the exact same as a normal baby would. Although, was Donald really being treated like a normal baby? They likely never had the time to ask that question, because over these 9 months, there were so many experiments, tests.
Dude, just imagine when he grows up, though, or yeah, it's a he. Imagine when he grows up, like, do you think that like fucked with him like that's is it size? Fuck, I can't speak. Like mentally, like I feel like that would fuck me up mentally if I grew up with like a chimpanzee and like my parents are focusing only on the chimpanzee to see how he is. I feel like I would have like attachment issues or like jealousy, or like all the experiments would probably just be like overload. I feel like I would like have trouble learning stuff. I don't know, like I don't know. I feel like that would be like psychologically fucked up. I said the word.
Practices. There was literally no time to think about anything besides the daily tasks. Winthrop, during this time, literally took a leave of absence from his job to focus on this experiment full time and even moved his family down to Florida to be closer to the university where he had gotten this chimp and where he would be submitting his research. Now, after 9 months of daily testing and analysis, the experiment was mysteriously stopped. And while almost every aspect of this experiment was relatively well documented, the reason for why it stopped was not, which led to a bit of speculation. One primary belief is that they ended the experiment due to the rapid growth of Gua compared to Donald. Obviously, animals develop a lot faster than humans do, and in 9 months, Gua could have doubled or tripled in size, making her possibly dangerous to baby Donald.
Well,
However, another leading theory is due to the fact that Donald was picking up more chimpanzee tendencies than the Kellogg's would have liked.
Imagine
this is
that.
supported by some of the documents that the Kellogg's made. They even admitted near the end of the test that Donald was behind when it came to communication, and really only had a very small vocabulary of words and wasn't babbling much, and typically would only mimic the noises that Gua would make. Regardless of
What
the
the
reason,
hell?
after 9 months, the
We're just
experiment was
stupid.
closed. And while the experiment was well documented and completed at this point, the story doesn't end there. Because unfortunately, only a year after Gua was returned to the facility that she was taken from, she passed away from pneumonia. And Donald, on the other hand, was reported to have suffered from social and emotional issues through his young and adult life,
That's what I was saying.
and even ended up taking his own life at the age of 43. At this point, with the experiment basically being almost 100 years old, it's kind of up to speculation to try to understand if the parents knew that Donald would simply be a control for this test that they were doing, or if they knew that this experiment could potentially have detrimental side effects to their own child. But regardless, it happened, and now we know the consequences. And unsurprisingly, the ethics of this experiment were widely criticized, specifically because they used their own human child in such a strange and long-lasting experiment.
I
And
get it,
while
like,
some
if
of the findings from
he
this
was a little
experiment
older,
end up
what the
becoming
heck?
useful in
was
scientific
that?
research of animals and humans, one has to ask themselves, is it worth experimenting on your own child? Is it worth experimenting on any human? Is it worth experimenting on animals? That's a question I'll leave to you.
No,
Regardless, the
it's
child
not.
and the ape experiment is rather unfortunate. And if you can believe it, this is the most tame human experiment we're going to discuss in this list. They only get worse from here, and we're only just getting started. Let's move on. The little
Alright, next one. Lock in, lock in, lock in.
In the first experiment, we discussed a child who was not given the proper opportunity to develop like a normal child should, and unfortunately, they became a victim of that. Although in this experiment, we do discuss another child, however, they weren't just not given the opportunity to develop, they were forced to develop negative connections in their brain. Not
What
to
the
get
fuck?
too far ahead of ourselves, but this is literally a Pavlov experiment that took place on children, not dogs. Let me explain. The Little Albert experiment was conducted by John B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner and took place in 1920. And the point of the Little Albert experiment was to see if they could condition children to fear something that would typically not provoke fear. Already off to a great start. Watson famously claimed that if he was given 12 newborn children, he could condition them in their
Who's letting these old people do experiments on babies?
upbringing to turn them into any sort of person you could desire. A lawyer, a doctor, a murderer. Anything you wanted a person to be, you could condition them to become that during their early years. I definitely do not think we should be giving John B. Watson any children. Regardless,
That's what I just said. Like, who is giving this old man a fucking kid to raise and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna raise him to be a doctor? This not up to the parent what the child is gonna become. I mean, you can guide them in that direction, but it's not gonna definitively give the child to grow up to be that. You know, I mean, it has to be on the person itself and like let it grow into what it wants to be, make the decisions of what it wants. But you can't definitively say, okay, I can raise this child to be something, unless you're. I can't say that.
in the 1920s, somebody did. Watson was able to get his hands on a 9-month-old baby, known as Albert, for his experiment. Watson planned on using classical conditioning methods, also known as Pavlovian conditioning, because it was the same method that Pavlov used to condition dogs. The experiment began with little Albert.
Yes, but that it's dogs. It's dogs. Baby humans are different than dogs. Right. Yes, we may shit, right? But we have a diaper. Dogs don't have a diaper. Fucking dogs. We scream. Dogs bark. Like, doing something to a baby is not gonna, or do something to a dog, it's not gonna have the same results as a baby. You know, we don't have the mentality to contain that amount of emotions and all that. It's just hard. It's just hard to contain all those emotions. So theoretically, you can't do that. I mean, theoretically, it sounds like it could because, you know, a dog. It's just honestly, it's theoretically, it's not. I don't. Let's stop doing human experiments on babies. And that's why they stopped doing it, because it makes no sense at all. Let's log back in.
Albert being placed in a room. Watson, his partner, and a rat were all in this room together. And Watson and his partner simply watched how Albert and the rat would interact. At first, they weren't interested in each other until Albert decided to reach out and touch the white lab rat. It was at that point when Rosalie would strike a metal bar with a hammer, making a loud and scary noise, which would obviously upset Albert. And they would continue to do this time after time in this room every time Albert decided to reach out to the lab rat, until the point where Albert wanted nothing to do with this lab rat. Albert had associated this lab rat with a scary, unpleasant experience. And because of that, this lab rat that he was curious about, he was now afraid of. And not only now was this little Albert afraid of mice, but his fear began to become generalized. They learned this because after the experiment, when they handed Albert a teddy bear, Albert also rejected and gave the same reaction to this fluffy teddy bear that he did to the mouse. And it was theorized that at that point, it wasn't only the mouse that was triggering this negative reaction, but it was any fuzzy object that resembled the white mouse to the fake.
What did they think was gonna happen? What did they think was gonna happen?
Baby. Some examples were a white teddy bear, a white rabbit, a small dog, and even a Santa Claus mask. Fortunately, this specific experiment only had one victim, and that was little Albert. There was no control subjects, and the study basically ended there, and the paper was... And that was little Albert.
I'm a grown adult. I'm a grown adult, and I would still be scared of somebody fucking coming up to me with the mask. Like, look how terrified that baby is. What?
There was no control subjects, and the study basically ended there, and the paper was published. And while that alone has obvious ethical flaws, once again, the story does not end there. Because Watson was now able to prove that he could condition a child, so what did he do next? Well, naturally, he decided to condition his own children. But he didn't condition his children for fear, but he did have some very interesting parenting philosophies. One of his most popular parenting philosophies was the thought that children should not be given too much attention. Watson believed that you should limit the amount of affection you showed your children. That meant during the day limiting hugs, no kisses, minimal affirmation, and minimal attention. He literally said that you shouldn't play with your kids because it would disrupt their routine, as if...
What? No. If you're a parent, give your attention to your child, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% of your attention, you know, because you still gotta do with your wife or your husband, you know, like give them attention to. Don't, you know, stop giving your spouse your attention. But if you're gonna have a child, give your child the attention that it needs. Don't think, oh, he doesn't need all my attention, or, you know, like I'm busy, you know that. If you're gonna have a child, make time for your child.
Children have routines. He also was a big proponent of sleep training, basically just letting your baby lay in the crib until it cries itself to sleep. Watson believed in all of this, and because he believed this and believed it to be good, he used all of these strategies on his 4 children that he had. Keep in mind, Watson claimed that if he was given newborn children, he could turn them into anything he wanted. So what do you think ended up happening to his 4 children? Let me tell you. Watson's son John suffered from unexplainable migraines and died in his early 50s. His daughter Mary struggled with alcohol abuse almost all of her adult life and attempted to take her life multiple times. Watson's other son James also attempted to take his life, and Watson's 4th child William did take his own life. Candidly, I'm not a parent, but I think it's safe to...
Remember, guys, suicide is not always the answer. It's never the answer, actually. It's never the answer. Reach out to somebody. There's always going to be somebody there for you. And if you feel like there isn't, I think the number is 988, I believe. I gotta look that up. But there's always somebody to reach out. Suicide is never the answer. No matter what you're going through, suicide is never the answer.
Assume, based off this example and possible common sense, providing your children with a safe, loving environment is likely ideal for them to be raised into happy, healthy people. But what do I know? If you're a parent and you're watching this, let me know your thoughts on this experiment in the comments below. Regardless, the true identity of little Albert was never disclosed. It's unknown whether or not the parents of little Albert knew about the experiment. The long-term effects of this experiment that took place on little Albert are unknown and unfortunately are likely not good based off of the evidence we've seen. And Watson not only unsuccessfully raised his own children, but also influenced influence an entire generation on how to raise their children, which likely had an interesting impact on society. I think it's important to know that near the end of his life, Watson became rather reclusive and began to denounce a lot of his previous work, stating that he should have not made the books he did or made the claims that he had simply because he didn't have the knowledge yet. And it's even reported that he burned a lot of the physical copies of his experiments that he had in his personal study. You always want to assume the best in people, and maybe Watson just thought that if you gave your children too much affection, they would simply be attention-seeking, unhappy people. And for that reason, if that is truly the case, then it's unfortunate that he made such a detrimental mistake with those that likely meant the most to him.
Okay, I'm done with this video. Talking too much. I see. I bought AI generated ads. See what this is.
Hey everybody, my name is Sam, aka Sambucha, and I'm a YouTuber who makes variety content ranging from challenges to gaming to... Have you ever been scrolling on social media, or maybe you're just on YouTube and you come across an obviously fake AI
Oh my gosh,
ad?
is this guy?
Well, I have, and so today I figured I'd actually go ahead and purchase those to see if they're legit or not. Because
Why
not
make
gonna
closed
lie, a lot
captions?
of them look really cool, and I'd love for a couple of them to be real, because sometimes I see these things and I'm like, wow, I wish that was real. So this is probably not a great video for my wallet, because I'll be spending thousands of dollars on most likely, let's be real, fake items that I'll never end up getting, but I care about your entertainment. And so, grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and let's do this. Alright, so the whole genesis of this thing is I came across this Instagram account called Inspiring Designs Net, and it's verified. They have 3 million followers, and I got this one in particular called Gorilla Sofas, and this looked so cool to me, and I thought to myself,
Oh, okay, no, I'm not gonna watch this one. I thought it was like just a good video. We built a $8,000. I was watching like Do Perfect. I don't know. It was just me and my cousin. We would watch Do Perfect. Like they had a show on Nickelodeon, I believe, and we would watch it like every day. We were like, man, imagine to be Do Perfect. I don't know. It was pretty cool, but like, how many trick shots can you do though? You know, like. It's cool coming up with ideas like this. Like I watched one of his videos. This was before I started streaming again. The fishy one. That was a good idea. But it's mostly. I feel like it's mostly Tyler. I think that's his name is. You know, and I don't know. I feel like I don't know if like the other ones are like trying to be part of it or not. But I don't know. Actual professional. Like a professional just came out. Like I'll do it. There's no way he did that shit 100%. Or maybe it seemed like he was just like relaxing it. Beach ball, try to hit it straight, you know, because if you hit it up, it's gonna go and it just drops. If you hit it straight, it fucking goes and then it flies up, you know, goes, you know. And this is where the cameraman comes. Tyler, that wasn't very good. And you know what? We're gonna have to let you go. That was us. Did I just get clickbaited? Are we dead ass? Do you think like right? If you got shot like right here. Do you think it would just like go straight through you, or like it'll fucking like indent it and like the baseball will be stuck there? I think it'll get stuck. I don't think it's fast enough to go through it like that, but I don't know. 200 miles per hour, skeleton, like the human skeleton body, and see what that does to it. I don't know if y'all seen that on TikTok or is it just me, but like how they fucking get the. Yeah. Man, why don't I watch Do Perfect more often? What's next? What's next? Let's watch this. Police chase. How long have I been live for?
Today I'm trying
38
out
minutes.
producer output. Go ahead and capture audio. Let's go ahead and find it.
From a speeding vehicle in Michigan that wedged itself under a box truck, and a Georgia state trooper who stayed in the chase after a bullet grazed his head, to a stolen police SUV in Florida
A bullet? Do you think they show it?
that crashed into oncoming.
What the hell was that? Come in. Hey. Y'all leaving? Want to say hi to chat?
I'm just going on.
Hi there. Hi there. Where's my son at?
In the car.
Oh. We got some good videos today.
Yes.
I gotta watch later.
I have to see. I don't know. We'll see.
Alrighty. Hold on. Don't look, chat. Love you.
Love you.
Thank you for the food.
I'll take it.
Alrighty. She brought me pizza. Y'all don't mind if I eat, right? There's nobody here but me, but I'm gonna eat.
Traffic, and a car thief in Milwaukee who drove his new ride over a bridge. Here are 8 police chases that went horribly wrong.
Oh, it's 8 police chases. I thought it was just like a single one. I mean, fuck, I'm for it.
It was February 1st of 2020.
Yo!
A sheriff's deputy in Marion County,
And they're gonna get some fucking money, though. They're gonna get some fucking money!
Florida, was responding to a call from a shopping center in Silver Springs, a small town about 85 miles northwest of Orlando. The caller claimed an irate woman had tried to take her car keys. The woman rambled about how she had to get out of here. She was begging for a ride when the altercation turned violent. When our sheriff's deputy arrived, he made contact with 33-year-old
Is that a dude or a girl? Or a chick?
Kendra Boone, whom he believed to be the caller. He got out to speak with her, at which point our deputy realized he was talking to the wrong person.
What the fuck?
They told me I should just got my car took off.
Sir, what happened today? Why did your car get stolen? I don't know, Chief. Let me see. I thought it was this different lady. Why the fuck did you not lock your door?
Rarely get to see high-speed chases from the suspect's point of view. Watch how she hits speeds over 100 miles per hour, weaves through traffic, and drives in the oncoming lane.
So that's what that was? In the beginning, she fucking hit the truck? Why'd she cough?
At one point, Kendra radioed the police to throw them off her trail.
What the fuck is this, GTA? Alright, this is where you go. You know, fucking just try that shit in. Nah, that's fucking smart though. They're fucking smart as shit. Dude, if I was driving, alright, say I'm driving, and I see that shit, I'm like, you think this shit's in Texas? What was she thinking?
Radio gave Kendra crucial information. She knew police had stop sticks ahead of her, so she pulled a quick U-turn to avoid.
Bruh, nah, she's a fucking mastermind, bruh.
From there, she kept her foot on the gas and never let up. Moments later, she lost control and crashed into an oncoming truck.
Sorry, guys. I'm lagging right now. Are we good? We're good. I think we're good.
Away from the car! Stay away from the car! Back up!
Watch me go! Bah, 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 bah.
Back up! Back up! Back up!
Damn!
6316, back signal 4, send
Nah, she got to be dead though.
next 1018.
We got another vehicle over here. You guys okay?
Signal 4, another vehicle.
Dude. Oh my gosh, that truck.
I'm not getting a response from them. Hello?
Imagine how the cop feels.
Marin, I got the police
Yo, she's actually dead. What the fuck?
crews are on fire.
YouTube, Twitch, I'm just playing. She's not dead.
Hey, Morse, get my fire extinguisher! Fire extinguisher!
Ah, that's good.
Fire extinguisher! Get it over here! Get it over here! Right here, really hot. Really hot.
Where's yours? Get out here!
Kendra and 2 occupants inside the truck passed away on the scene. A third was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and it's unclear if they recovered from their injuries. In a
What the
post-crash
fuck?
conference, Marion County Sheriff
Is this safe for Twitch?
Billy Woods called Kendra a moron. To prove his point, he unraveled her rap sheet of 13 felony charges and 9 misdemeanors. He said the deputy did nothing wrong, and that all the blame falls on Kendra for the passing of 2 innocent people.
You see, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it should be the cop's fault. I really don't know. Fuck.
Kendra's family felt differently. They claim Kendra was going through a severe mental health crisis when she stole the cop car.
If you have a mental problem, don't steal a cop car. You know, go to a therapist, you know, like a normal person. There's always ways to fix stuff. Don't ever steal somebody's car like that. Because shit like this happens.
They had contacted Marion County Police the night before, but Kendra fled the home before anyone arrived. In the end, hindsight.
And then again, you know, if the person doesn't want the help, they're not gonna get the help, or like even if you send them there, they're not gonna get help because it's up to you. It's up to the person to get some help. You know, it's always good to call for somebody, but don't like what they did. Call the cops. You know, do that because shit like this happens and it's sad. You know, so I don't know. They should have just got her.
Is 2020. The crash was a tragedy that should never have happened.
We're gonna stop it there because I don't know if this is safe for YouTube. I don't know. How long have we been? Let's see. I'll do 2 more videos. It's get scary today.
I wasted thousands on expensive car insurance until I found this hack. Listen to this, guys. I have a 2018 Tesla Model 3, and I love my so
On May 6, 2019, YouTuber Connor Kelly
On May 6, 2019.
posted a video of him exploring an abandoned McCoy gold mine in the Nevada desert. However,
Burger King foot lettuce. Burger King foot lettuce.
what was supposed to be nothing more than a fun adventure with his family quickly turned into a disturbing experience. One that would
It's me.
likely stay with the group for the rest of their lives.
Lock in!
The exploration of this mine started off quite normal, with the group staying silent to avoid causing an accidental cave-in as seen by the
If you're scared that just talking is gonna knock some rocks down, don't go in.
text they put on screen. However, after about a minute and a half of treading deeper into the mine, Connor noticed something strangely reflective on the path ahead.
Do you see that reflection? I'm trying to.
Bitch! Check it out! You go check it out if you're so curious. Fuck that. Yo, chat, say hello to Danny. Say hello to Danny.
Hello?
Yo, chat, look, it's Danny.
Oh, chat.
Yeah. What you doing, pa?
Damn, bro, I just finished in 2 seconds.
Uh-huh.
Damn, bro, I just finished. Nah, playing, I just finished.
W? W?
Yeah, W. Should I lock it?
What was that?
Fuck, I'm gonna lock this door.
Alright, chat, I'll be right back. Sorry, chat. Alright. Let's log back in. I'm sorry about that. What the fuck is that? Oh.
Okay, wait, don't move, Wyatt.
What they found
Somebody give her the back.
reflecting back at them was a shoe amongst many more in a massive pile with random bones scattered throughout.
This game does not look fun.
That's a bone right there. Actually, there's quite a few bones in this.
What made this pile even more odd was the sheer variety of shoes on display. Many of them were clearly very modern, while some were models that were released over 30 years ago. How could such a random assortment of shoes end up in an abandoned gold mine in the middle of nowhere? Things took an even darker turn when the group ventured further into the cave and found a bunch of bones, including a relatively intact spine.
So this is water flows. It is getting great. So we can't trust this.
Dude, what the fuck?
By this point, the group was growing increasingly unsettled by these disturbing discoveries, prompting...
Do you think it's like serial killers or like just like, or not serial killers, but like a serial killer or like just people that got lost or something like that, and like an animal took it in there, like a bear or something. I don't know.
them to leave the cave as quickly as possible. And that's where the original video ends, without any explanation or resolution. Connor didn't provide any more information in the video's description or in the comments. He posted 4 more videos after this, but none of these videos included any updates on the disturbing encounter either. So, what's going on here? One of the first things that comes to mind is that this mine was the collection spot for a serial killer. This would explain both the shoes and the bones. A top comment on the video also backs this theory, stating, "If you ever listen to the Missing 411 videos, you know shoes are a major component of missing or abducted people. This sent chills down my spine." Which is true. A statistical analysis of the Missing 411 data shows that over 15% of the cases involve absent shoes.
What?
However, this theory isn't entirely likely. For starters, I couldn't find any news reports regarding this mysterious pile of shoes, which is odd since judging from the number of shoes, this supposed killer would have had hundreds of victims. If this pile had such a violent history, it probably wouldn't go unnoticed by the media. More importantly, many people on the internet agree that the bones in the video are not human. The group in the video reaches the same conclusion when looking at the bones for the first time.
No, it looks like a cow or horse.
Yeah, but what about the shoes?
Put simply, the odds of this being a serial killer trophy cave are very low. But given the animal bones scattered throughout the area, it's possible it was the feeding spot of a predator like a mountain lion. Though, while that might explain the bones, it offers no clues about the pile of shoes. One theory I haven't seen anyone else bring up is that the shoes might have ended up there because of flooding. You see, the McCoy mine where the video was filmed is located in Lander County, and from what I can find, that area is quite prone to flooding. So it's entirely possible that someone dumped their sneaker collection in the middle of nowhere to get rid of it, only for it to be carried in the abandoned mine with rainwater.
Wait, why?
A mountain
What?
lion could have moved in later, which would explain the bones. The only proof I have of this theory is that the ground in the deepest part of the mine is extremely wet and has water flow marks leading into it. Other than that, it's pure speculation. That said, another potential explanation for both the bones and the shoes is that Connor placed them there himself in hopes of creating a viral video. People on the internet have pointed out that the bones in the video are a bit too clean for something left in a muddy cave by a predator. Some have also claimed that
Imagine
a
that
few of
shit.
the bones look like they're inorganic fabrications. Another inconsistency in Connor's video is that he and his group keep claiming that all the shoes in the pile are kid-sized.
How would he know that?
He even mentioned that in the video's title, which reads, "Kids' Shoes and Bones Found in Abandoned Mine." Now, while that makes an already creepy situation even more disturbing, it's simply not true.
Clickbait?
There are plenty of adult-sized shoes visible in this pile. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll ever know what happened here for sure. It's been 6 years since the video was uploaded, and as I mentioned earlier, Connor has vanished completely from the internet ever since. Action Adventure Twins is a YouTube channel run by brothers James and Edward. The duo has been exploring dangerous and cramped caves since early 2020. Yet, despite their combined experience, one of them almost lost his life back in 2022.
Oh shit.
In January of that year, the two decided to explore the popular Petty John's Cave in Georgia. They had already explored parts of this maze-like cave multiple times before, and had even found an underground waterfall during one of their expeditions. Put simply, they were pretty confident in their ability to...
Dude, you know it's fucking musty in there, musty. It's so fucking humid in caves.
Navigate through this cave. But unlike their previous ventures, this time they were going to tackle one of the hardest sections, the aptly named Nervous Breakdown, referring to how cavers feel when going through it. Things started off just as expected, with the pair going...
I would never go into a fucking cave, bro. That shit is... I mean, I have, but like a tight cave that's not like a National Geographic... Not National Cave shit, whatever. I would never do that shit.
Through the narrow and claustrophobic entrance to reach the first open area of the Petty John's Cave.
Like, look at that! What?
Whoa,
and if they fucking slip, oh my gosh, it's over. It's over.
However, it didn't take long for the cave to begin closing back again, forcing the two to squeeze through tiny passageways. But that was only the beginning. After about 25 minutes of crawling through increasingly tighter spaces, they reached the first big obstacle, a muddy room with a narrow and steep hole in the middle. They had to carefully walk around this hole to progress. A single slip and falling into the narrow hole and possibly getting injured. And given the lack of safe footing around the hole, it would have been near impossible for the other person to pull them out. After successfully navigating around this obstacle, they finally arrived at the entrance to Nervous Breakdown. Unfortunately for them, things weren't looking good. The area surrounding this entrance had collapsed some time ago, making it very difficult to figure out the path ahead. After looking around for a bit, Edward eventually found the real entrance and was excited to go in. He genuinely couldn't wait to find out what was down there and began his descent, leaving it...
Why does his speaky look like that? What the fuck? I'm sorry, I'm noticing like all the little details.
...his brother behind in case something bad happened. What he didn't realize was that this was about to be one of the worst decisions he'd ever make. Because after descending for a few minutes, Edward called for his brother, only to be met with complete silence.
What the fuck?
I found a rope.
Oh, so somebody's been there before.
I don't hear James anymore.
Nah, dude, I would be fucking scared if I went with somebody and I don't hear nothing. I'm like, there. Where's everybody?
Uh-oh.
In other words, Edward was now lost in an unknown section of the cave without any means of contacting his brother. At first, he tried to stay calm and continued his descent, hoping to find James before long. However, after staying separated for over 30 minutes, the realization set in.
30 minutes?!
He knew panic was the fastest way to make a bad situation worse, but at this point he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease.
James!
Nah! What the fuck?
It's been like 30 minutes since the last time.
James!
I don't even know where I'm at. I tried to go back to the last place I saw
Oh, you
him.
can hear the panic in his voice. Holy
Everything
shit.
just looks the same.
Everything looks the same because it's rocks. I'm not an expert though.
It's just a jumbo maze. We should have never split up.
After calling out to James many times with no luck, he decided to retrace his steps and find the way back. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the difficulty of the maze he was about to enter. Every direction looked the same. The narrow passages and jagged walls made it impossible to tell where he had come from. To top it all off, his situation was getting worse with each step he took. If he went the wrong way, he could easily wedge himself into a passage too tight to escape, or worse, plunge
Dude,
into
I
a
will
hidden
panic.
jungle. This is the true horror of caving. Even if he didn't injure himself, he could have just as easily wandered around aimlessly until his body gave way into exhaustion, leaving him lifeless in a cold, rocky
Why are there so many
crevice.
batteries there?
The footage of him excitedly dropping into the nervous breakdown entrance would have ended with the camera recording his descent into confusion, fear, and eventually silence. Fortunately, that wasn't the end of his story. After going in loops for a while, Edward
Where's the
spotted
brother
a
at?
single piece of tape he saw on his way down.
Oh. The tape. Yeah. Okay, this tape.
Oh my gosh, the relief in his voice.
Oh yeah. This has got to be the way.
This got to be the way.
I'm getting close. James!
James!
Still nothing.
This unexpected clue turned out to be exactly what he needed. It helped him regain his bearings and finally head in the right direction. Finally, he heard the best sound he could have heard in that moment.
James! Oh.
Dude, oh
You're
my
over here.
gosh.
Oh. Dude.
He's so nonchalant about it. What the
Place is a
fuck?
maze, man.
Oh, hey, I see your light.
Dude. I thought we were never gonna see each other. Dude, I know. Oh.
The two stayed together for the
How are they
rest
so
of the
nonchalant
expedition
about it?
and made it out alive without any major injuries. They're still
They're just
exploring
chill
caves
guys.
on YouTube, but now with a lot more caution. In January of 2014, a group of cave explorers decided to conquer the Lost John's
That looks
Cave in
nasty.
Lancashire,
Looks
England.
like there's shit in
It's
there.
a vast cave network that spans a length of nearly 3
You know that dude has fucking crazy ass lore. Like, look at him.
miles, or 4.8 kilometers. The known deepest section of this cave also goes down a staggering
This guy doesn't.
690 feet, or 211 meters. Most members of this group had been spelunking for years, and like most other cave explorers, were quite confident in their skills. They had also done their research and mapped out their route in advance. But
So is that the tunnels? Like, you start from there and then it keeps on going and it keeps on going. Fuck that shit.
the truth about caving is when things go wrong, no amount of planning can save you. Even the most experienced and well-prepared explorers can find themselves in terrifying situations, which is exactly what happened to one of the members.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of this group, named Bob Johnson. The expedition was going quite smoothly in the beginning, with the group using the equipment they brought with them to continue safely. That is, until they reached a section of the cave called the Tube. It was an unusually narrow section that
What
required the
the hell?
cavers to crawl on their stomach. And to make matters worse, it was also partially submerged in water, making it difficult to both
What makes
see
this
and
fun?
breathe. Despite these harsh conditions, the group decided to move ahead. The slimmest member of the group went first and successfully made it to the other side without much trouble. The next person, however, wasn't as fortunate. This was Bob Johnson, the man we mentioned earlier.
What a
His
fucking
crawl
name.
through the tube wasn't off to a good start, as he was already having issues with the comparatively wider sections of the passage. He then somehow managed to reach
Hey,
the
thank you
tightest
for the
part of
follow.
this
Same
treacherous
boat.
section.
Same
But
boat
that's
as
where his luck
before.
ran out.
Welcome to the chat. Right now we're just reacting to disturbing cave videos.
He was completely stuck from the waist down, and any attempt to free himself only made the situation worse.
Yeah.
Now, being
Yeah.
stuck in a narrow cave like this is extremely stressful on its own. The walls close in on you, and every movement feels like
Do you
it's
think the
pushing
water
you
can
further
fill
into
up?
the tight space. Panic sets in as you realize just how little room you have to maneuver, and with each failed attempt to free yourself, the fear intensifies.
How are you doing, same boat as
But
before?
as if the confined space
I'ma call you
wasn't
Boat.
enough to make his heart race, Bob now had to contend with something far more terrifying: the rapidly flowing water. Water makes any caving venture 10 times worse. In a dry cave, even if you're stuck, you still have time to
That's
think
good.
and plan your
Question: would you do this? I would never do this shit, bro.
escape. But when water starts to rise, the situation shifts from bad to life-threatening. The feeling of water creeping up around you in an already claustrophobic space is a nightmare on its own. The real danger with water,
For
however,
real.
is that you have mere
Like,
minutes
oh
before
my
drowning
gosh.
becomes a very real
Imagine
possibility.
being stuck and just
Bob
feeling
knew
like
this
the
possibility all
compression
too
on your
well.
chest or like
He gave
wherever
his
it's
all to
at.
free
Oh
himself.
my gosh, I could not do that.
Unfortunately, the water was quickly filling up his suit, making it even more difficult to squeeze through. But when
Dude,
the
he's
situation seemed
panicking.
hopeless, one of the members had an idea that ended up saving Bob's life. Instead of pushing forward, the members behind him tried pulling him back, and it worked.
He got lucky. It looks tight. He got stuck.
Bob was finally free, though his troubles weren't over. He later revealed in a comment that him and the two members who pulled him back had crawled for another 3 hours to get out of the cave from a different exit.
3 hours?
This incident also left him traumatized to the point where he can't even watch this video without becoming anxious. From what I can find, he scaled back on caving and picked up a much safer hobby in cycling.
That's
and
still
now
scary,
appears to be
though.
doing just fine.
Ah, no. Gotta get YouTube Premium. Alright, let's get that.
On the 7th of September 2024, the Action Adventure Twins YouTube channel posted a video exploring a mysterious cave someone found on their property. This is the same channel we talked about earlier, where the two brothers got separated and
Oh,
almost
yeah,
lost
okay.
their lives in the maze.
Oh
of
yeah,
the
this is
cave.
the people.
They've learned their lesson since and approached this one with far more caution. But
Are you
with
liking
an
this
entrance
video, or
as
should I
life-threatening
change it
as
to
this
something
one,
else?
Even the best
Because it's
precautions
kinda
could have
repetitive,
proven to not
I
be
feel
enough.
like.
Alright, so the guy dropped us off halfway up the hill, and he doesn't know anybody who's been down this thing, but we were at the cave. He says he threw a rope down it with a rock and it was 200 feet deep before it stopped. So we got this stick here.
You see, this is 200 feet deep. Let's try to explore. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You know, nobody's been here. Let me just drop down 200 feet too.
We're gonna
Makes
see
no
if our
sense.
rope reaches. It's still. Oh. You were right.
Holy
It kept
shit.
going.
This alone is enough to terrify most people, with one person stating, "This channel has given me a new fear about walking in the woods. The fact that you could just slip and fall down a hole like that is insane. Now anytime I go anywhere, I wonder how many massive voids are right below my feet that I could fall into at any moment." But that didn't deter Edward and James. They quickly secured their rope to a nearby tree and began descending into the steep cave.
They went.
What they found inside was nothing short of breathtaking. That tiny opening gave way to a vast chasm.
Okay, that is pretty cool though to see.
Yeah. This is a big one, man.
That's what she said.
However, before they could fully take in the beauty of the cavern, things took a dark turn. Just seconds into the cave, the two discovered what looked like human remains scattered throughout.
That's comforting human bones, huh?
Somebody probably fell in.
Dude, look behind you.
Somebody probably fell
There's
in,
like
and
a
then
little
like the water, like the
triangle.
rainwater, probably like moved it
There's
in.
like- oh, that's
Oh,
a
that
cranium.
does.
Dude, is that a human?
No, that looks like a human cranium. Full grease that shit.
Yeah, that looks human, man. That doesn't necessarily make. I don't know. I'm not.
Puts
a
it back.
expert.
From there, they continued exploring the cave as it kept getting bigger the further they went into it. They also discovered old caving equipment like ropes and harnesses already secured to the walls, a detail that only deepened the mystery surrounding the bones they had found earlier. If they did belong to a person, as the two suspected, it was possible they belonged to a previous explorer.
And they
This
probably got
explorer
stuck.
likely had an accident and died in the cave without ever making it out. On their way in,
Imagine.
they did find scattered bones right below the entrance. These were likely the remains of people who accidentally fell into the otherwise unassuming hole. However, the bones they found further inside were too far from the entrance to have belonged to someone who simply fell in. It's also possible that these
Maybe.
remains belonged to the victim of a deranged killer. Someone who either had ended a person's life within the cave, or maybe threw the person into the hole and later dragged their body further into the cave. Some people, however, weren't convinced and accused the brothers of faking the whole thing, especially since the way Edward and James handled some of these remains felt
Yeah.
a bit too casual. That said, while YouTubers faking these finds to get a viral video isn't uncommon, this one turned out to be true. The video received several comments from experts confirming that these remains were indeed real and human, with one such person writing, "My
They actually fucking kill somebody and then put the bones there.
girlfriend and I are watching from Canada. We're both paramedics, definitely a human femur and a human cranium. But this raised an even bigger question. When did the owner of these bones pass away? If
Bro.
they disappeared into the cave in the last few decades, this discovery could end up cracking an unsolved case. I ended up contacting the Action Adventure twins to see what they had to say or if they had made any police reports afterwards. We ended up contacting the authorities about the bones. They were determined to be human and were apparently a Native American that either slipped and fell into the pit cave or was thrown in there after death and are 2,000 years old. While this did rule out the possibility that these bones belonged to someone more recent,
What if
the
they have
despair of
decayed
whoever
already?
ended up in that cave alone 2,000 years ago is just as impossible to ignore. They likely fell into the cave, somehow survived the fall, and ended up starving to death while looking for a way out.
I feel like the bones
On
are
October
decayed.
28, 2004, 50-year-old Australian airline pilot and scuba diver David John Shaw broke the world record for the deepest successful dive in history. He achieved this by reaching a depth of 270 meters in Bushman's Hole, one of the deepest freshwater caves in the world.
That looks
The
pretty.
sole purpose of this dive was to
That
break
does
the
look pretty.
record.
Okay.
However, when he reached
Bo, if you're still in here, would you swim in there? I might take a little dip. Just saying.
the bottom, he found something that stopped him in his tracks. He found the body of Dion Dreyer, a 20-year-old scuba diver who died in that cave 10 years ago. Since humans start sinking after a certain depth, Dion's body never floated back to the surface. Given the extreme difficulty and danger of diving this deep, any plans to retrieve his body were also cancelled at the time of his death. However, a plaque in his name was installed near the diving point of Bushman's Hole, which is how Dave knew what he was looking at. After staring at the body in shock for a few seconds, Dave immediately got closer and tried to retrieve Dion. Unfortunately, after a decade in the water, his tanks were firmly stuck in the mud. More importantly, Dave had already spent too much time at that depth. Staying any longer would have been fatal. So he decided to tie a line to Dion's body and return to the surface with the newfound information.
It looked very steep. And when I saw the body over to my left, I thought, oh, that's the end of going deep.
There's a body down there?
Tied my line to it. And by then I was, well, we won't discuss
I
that.
usually, but I usually stream reactions, or I just started reactions. But sometimes I play like Fortnite here and there, or like what is it, Call of Duty sometimes. But I kind of wanted to starting to get into Minecraft, but I think I'm gonna start focusing more on reactions, simply because it's more entertaining. I feel like, because I can commentate on it, but I do other things too. But yeah, it's mostly reactions right now.
And so I just flipped my line.
The news of Dion's body being discovered spread quickly, eventually culminating in Dave talking to his parents and
this
promising
video is
to
old.
retrieve it. After a couple months of preparation, the next dive was scheduled for January 8th, 2005. Unfortunately, Dave's heroic attempt to bring closure to Dion's parents ended in a catastrophe far worse than anyone could have imagined. Cave diving, aka underwater cave exploration, is far more dangerous than regular spelunking. The divers have to manage their oxygen levels at all times,
crazy.
avoid often sharp rock formations, and explore the cave system in a far darker
Like, how
environment.
does
because
Earth
even the
just
brightest
have that?
flashlights aren't as effective underwater, all while making sure they don't get lost. Add in the immense pressure of 270 meters of water above, it becomes an almost insurmountable challenge, one that only a handful of people on the planet are capable of overcoming. So, everything needed to be perfect for Dave's operation to succeed. He worked with police divers.
What flag is that? It's a cool flag.
The Defense Force, and the medics to
Whoever made that flag was fucking cooking.
ensure everything went smoothly, and they planned the dive second by second. According to the plan, Dave would use the line he tied earlier to reach Dion's body. After cutting it loose and putting it in a special body bag, he would begin his descent. This descent
what
would have
the
taken
fuck?
around 12 hours to avoid decompression sickness. So instead of holding on to Dion's body the entire time, Dave would pass it along to his longtime friend Don Shirley at 220 meters. Don would then hand it over to support divers located at various depths and keep checking
What's
on
the point
Dave
of getting
for
the
any
body?
issues. Sadly, this is not how it went. An hour and a half after the dive began, the service crew received an ominous message from the support divers, claiming that they hadn't seen any activity from Dave or Don. Shortly after, another message reached the surface. This one was from Don, stating that he's seeing Dave in the distance, and he's not moving. While this message was making its way to the surface, Don tried to reach Dave himself. He exceeded his target depth, which resulted in his rebreather controller imploding. This also led to him suffering from oxygen poisoning and vomiting while 220
Leave Dave.
meters under the water.
Leave Dave.
Fortunately, he managed to keep hold of the line and was eventually pulled out of the water still breathing. Dave, however, didn't make it. But when rescue teams pulled out his body, they made a shocking discovery. Dion's body was attached to the recovery line as well. Following the recovery, investigators looked at the footage captured by the waterproof camera mounted on Dave's head. This is what they saw. Though I should mention, I couldn't find the raw footage from that camera. The only clip of it online is narrated by Don himself, Dave's best friend who we just talked about, who almost died trying to save his life. The footage shows Dave moving alongside the line to find Dion's body, and then trying to put it in the bag. Unfortunately, this is where the plan started falling apart. Dion's body was unexpectedly loose from the mud and was moving around uncontrollably. Dave tried to complete his mission despite this, only to end up getting tangled.
Why were they
in
trying to get the
line.
body in the first place?
This line is just getting everywhere because this body is floating. It's not stuck. Everything's moving. Right. Light gets caught on the line there. Move it out of the way. Still got a nice bright light.
All this effort caused him to neglect his gauges, resulting in Dave feeling the effects of nitrogen narcosis, which include poor judgment, trouble concentrating, and reduced muscle and nerve function. Put simply, he lost everything he needed to survive at that depth. He tried to cut the tangled line, but the lack of coordination made it near impossible. As he was struggling to stay conscious, the last thing he saw was the terrifying view of Dion's lifeless face mask staring back at him.
Oh shit.
Shortly after this, Dave passed away. The only silver lining was that the tangled line kept Dion's body close to Dave, allowing him to successfully complete his mission by recovering the body, only at the cost of his own life.
Damn, Dave. Should've just thought about yourself. That was a good video. Let me see. Worst execution methods. That seems interesting.
Why is everyone spiraling over YouTube banning ad blockers? Like, chill guys, just use Pi. It's a free Chrome extension, and it basically...
The craziest execution methods from around the world. When you talk about
trust
executions,
me, bro.
everybody seems to talk about what their last meal would be, but nobody seems to talk about what their execution method would be. And in this video, I'm going to show you some truly...
Throughout the whole execution, I would... Man. What would I be? Probably the modern way, just... Oh, but I'm scared of needles. I don't know. I'll say the modern way. Or gun me down. Bah, 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 bah.
obscure and brutal execution methods from around the world that you would never want to experience. And as always, this video only gets more brutal as the list goes on. Italy. Falling. Italy has a long and rich history, and for that reason, I'm going to give a few examples of how they used this one torture method throughout different parts of its history in different ways. Let's start in pre-Roman Sardinia. Imagine you're just an old person living in your little hut, maybe on the coast of the island that you reside on. You realize that you're getting up there in age and realize that soon the ritual was going to happen. One day, a group of young men come into your house and tell you it's ritual time, and you prepare for what's about to happen, as you've seen it happen to other men your age.
Do
You're
people
first
even live that
given
old?
A mysterious neurotoxic drink. You are then carried to a nearby cliff by these young men. But these young men aren't just on this cliffside to watch the sunset with you. They are raising you above their head Lion King style and throwing you off a cliff. That's right.
What the
first
fuck?
execution method we're talking about is falling. Definitely one of the most simple entries on this list, but trust me, the implications are pretty wild. In this first example I gave in pre-Roman Sardinia, people were literally just executing the elderly. Like, this was a common ritual. During this time, if you were an elderly person who was unable to support themselves, you were ritually killed. And this was
Imagine that. Hey, grandson, how are you? Oh, it's ritual time.
was just an accepted practice in pre-Roman Sardinia. And as I described, how this would typically go is they would get the old person intoxicated through a neurotoxic plant that was known as the sardonic herb. Regardless, once they get their elderly victim nice and high, they will take them somewhere nice and high. And at that point, they have one of two options.
What the fuck?
They're either dropped from a high height or beaten to death and then dropped from a high height.
What
and
the
that's
fuck?
just the Sardinian version of an old folks home. There's really not too much more to say about literally falling off a cliff, but it is an interesting execution method, and I wanted to add it specifically for this reason because in Italy, they were just doing it differently. This wasn't the only time that falling was used as an execution method in modern-day Italy. For example, during the Roman Empire, an emperor by the name of Tiberius was known to also use this method, also for an interesting reason. Emperors would execute people for a plethora of reasons, but Tiberius would specifically execute boys that he was no longer enjoying physically, if you get my drift. Once Tiberius felt that he had his fun with these boys, he would have them thrown off a cliff while he watched. But he was compassionate because he didn't have these boys thrown onto rock, he had these boys thrown into water. Obviously, being thrown into water could still lead to instant death or death by drowning, but there is a chance that these boys could survive. But don't worry, Tiberius definitely thought of this. So when he had these boys thrown off a cliff into the water, he had men in boats below waiting for these boys to land in the water where they could then break their bones with oars.
What the
fuck?
fuck?
So yeah, falling is definitely one of the most prehistoric and simple methods of execution. But in Italy, back in the day, they were using it for some very strange reasons. But let's move on. The United States. The upright jerker.
USA! 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 USA!
Realize this execution method sounds like your nighttime routine, but trust me, it's not.
What the fuck are we doing now, bro? What are we doing?
Not nearly as fun. You see, in the 19th and early 20th century, the United States was doing a lot of hangings. And as society began to get more civilized, they thought, maybe these public hangings everybody loves is a bit barbaric. We should definitely keep executing people in public, but let's do it differently. And the product of that thought was the upright jerker, which kind of sounds like a nickname you would give someone who sleepwalks and sleepwanks at the
Dude, what the fuck?
same time. Seriously though, where the upright jerker differed from the traditional hanging was as follows. Traditional hanging would take place on a gallows, typically high up with a trapdoor below the condemned person's feet. The executioner would open the trapdoor and the person would fall and the rope would snap their neck or quickly strangle them, with the weight of their body compressing their neck in the noose. During this time, there was a lot of high-profile botched hangings, which is why they decided to try something new, something that they thought would be more effective. The upright jerker differed from traditional hangings because instead of being dropped from a height onto your neck, you would start on the ground and actually be lifted up by your neck. This would happen with the same style of noose being connected to the victim's neck, although the rope would be connected to a series of pulleys that would be connected to weights. So when the executioner was ready, he would activate the system and the condemned person would be hoisted up into the air, typically instantly breaking their neck, and if not, similar to hanging, would slowly be strangulated to death. The name upright jerker comes from the victim obviously being upright and being shot into the air, but jerker refers to how the body would typically move after they would be flung into the air, because the pulley system would typically bounce the body up and down, jerking them. Definitely morbid. And an interesting take on hanging I haven't heard of until now.
This is your class at the College of Aeronautics at
This
Hallmark
is your
University.
crush aeronautics. Shut up.
Sri Lanka. Crushing
Sri Lanka!
I mean, you
I've heard
probably
about
already
this,
get
but this
the
one's
idea,
fucking
but
crazy.
I'm gonna give a bit more context because, believe it or not, there is some nuance to this. Unlike the very first example I talked about, this method was used on criminals. So we're at least off to a better start. How this execution method would work is, after the justice system of the time would do its thing, and then the person was then sentenced to death, they would then have them ready for the elephant execution. How this would look is the condemned person would be put on a pedestal, typically a smooth stone surface, and then they would bring in the elephants. But here's the thing, the elephant could go one of many ways. Depending on how trained the elephant was, they would either walk the elephant back and forth over top of the person until the elephant
This is just like curb stomping on a whole another fucking level.
accidentally stepped on the vitals of this person. Or if the elephant was more trained, the elephant would deliberately step on the person's limbs, torso, and even head to quickly execute the individual. Pretty simple, but extremely brutal. But these weren't the only ways that they would use elephants to their advantage. In some cases, they wouldn't even have the elephant step on the person at all, at least not at first. They wouldn't start with the person laying down. They would allow the elephant to grab the person by their trunk and throw them around. And then, once they were thrown to the ground, the elephant would then, do its little moonwalk. This method was used not only in Sri Lanka, but also in India and other parts of Asia for quite a long time. It was
Dude, elephants are
popular
fucking
into the late
crazy.
19th century, although in modern times it's no longer used. However, the terrifying stories still remain. And if you plan on becoming a time-traveling criminal, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing anything in Sri Lanka during the 17th, 18th, or 19th century, unless you want to get up close and personal with Dumbo. China. Execution vet.
Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. What's going on?
Okay, so this is the first modern method on the list.
China!
Surprise, surprise, is one of the only modern methods, because a lot of the modern methods now are humane as they can be, and most places don't even do executions anymore. But leave it to China to give us an interesting entry for this list. And while most countries around the globe have been decreasing or even entirely eliminating the amount of executions they're doing every year, China is actually raising those numbers and has a plethora of laws that if you break, you can be executed. Which is for that reason why they have the execution van, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is literally a van that is kitted out to kill criminals. From the outside, the van appears to be a 24-person bus, with its windows covered and with minimal police markings. But on the inside of this bus, it almost resembles a hospital room, although nobody in this van is going to be healed. Typically, how it would work is once you end up on a Chinese death row, instead of going to a part of the prison where you'd be executed, you would be picked up by the van. And once in the van, you'd be strapped down to an operating-style table and then injected with a lethal injection. And at that point, driven likely to the morgue. Truthfully, finding publicly available information on China's global execution chambers is a bit tough, although it's definitely not a secret.
I wonder what you
These
gotta do
execution
to do
vans have
that.
been in use since 2003, and are still in use to this day.
What
Although
the hell?
technically this method is only lethal injection, I think the fact that China has systematized it to a point where they've made it a literal mobile execution chamber for maximum efficiency definitely earns it a spot on this list.
Maximum
Just
efficiency?
imagine
What the
living in China
fuck?
and seeing this thing though. Like in your everyday life, when you see a hearse go by, you get kind of that a feeling or a thought. But if you see
Yeah.
an execution van go by, I can't imagine the literal aura of that thing. Can't be good. Spain.
It's just ore farming.
All right, buckle up. Things are really taking a dark turn now. The garrote was used in the 1800s and the 1900s and was used not only in Spain but also in Spanish colonies, like the Philippines. And interestingly, the garrote was seen as a more merciful form of execution compared to the going technique of death by burning, which I'll let you make your own opinion on once I explain the garrote. The garrote consists of a small seat for you to sit on and
Okay.
a wooden plank going up your spine. Once in the seat,
Okay.
you have a metal loop wrapped around your neck. And directly behind your head on the wooden
I know some of y'all fuckers would like that shit.
post that your spine is aligned with would be essentially a big screw. And what this screw would do was actually twofold. Because as the executioner would turn the screw from behind your neck, a sharp piece of metal would slowly be pressing against the back of your neck. And with every turn, your neck would become crushed by the piece of metal literally securing your head to this post. And how the victim would die would vary. But the two most common methods were either one, having the person's brainstem literally explode due to the pressure from the spike going through the back of the neck, or if you were lucky, before you even got to that point, you were asphyxiated to death by the pressure on your neck through the metal loop. Regardless, the garrote is
Hell
absolutely
nah,
great.
that's
Just a
fucking
quick pop quiz.
crazy.
When do you think they stopped using this brutal device? The use was officially and finally abolished in
1982.
1978.
Fuck.
Only 47 years ago. Chances are, if you're watching this video, either your parents or possibly even yourself were alive during the time that this device was still in use. Some history isn't as far back as you think. Let's keep moving. Uzbekistan. Boiling alive. I'm going to preface this by saying that historically, boiling alive was used a lot in both England and China. But because we already talked about China and we're going to be speaking about England, I decided to pin this on Uzbekistan because they have the most recent recorded usage of this method. Now you might be asking yourself, What exactly is the method? And let me tell you, death by boiling is when somebody boils not just water, but also animal fat, motor oil, cooking oil, or really any liquid of their choice, and then they would submerge their victim in
So what are we, just lobsters now? Like, come on now.
this boiling liquid. And the result would be likely one of the most excruciating experiences humanly possible. And for that reason, it's on the list. Historically, Henry VIII made boiling the official execution method
Henry
for
VIII?
anybody who committed murder via poisoning, as well as anybody who committed high treason. And during the 16th century in Japan, Japanese bandits were boiled alive as well. But in more modern times, specifically from 1991 all the way until 2016, Uzbekistan is alleged to have been boiling suspected terrorists on the regular. And this is kind of confirmed by a United States Department of
just
State
left them.
document from 2004, which confirmed that the Uzbekistan government had tortured 2 gang members, and their bodies were extensively bruised, burned, and reportedly submerged in boiling water as well, making that allegation a little bit more real. And since we're speaking about boiling people alive in the modern day, there's a documentary that came out in 2010 about Sicarios, the Latin American gang. And during this documentary, during an interview with a Sicario, the Sicario claimed that the Mexican cartel would boil alive anybody found to be working for the police. And these people were boiled alive in oil until they were no longer alive. So even though in the modern
Crispy.
day, no country has boiling alive on their menu of official execution methods, there are definitely places where it's still being done, which is a terrifying thought. Ancient Rome, penalty of the sack. Ancient
sack?
Rome's got a lot of history and interesting execution styles.
Dude, imagine living in Rome. That's pretty cool. Or not cool, because, you know, shit happened back then. But I don't know. I would love to try that out. Sorry, I'm yawning.
Is part of that history. Now, truthfully, penalty of the sack kind of sounds like something you'd pay a dominatrix for. But in reality, it's just the translation of
freaky
the
shit.
original Latin word, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce because, well, you guys roast me. And similar to the very first execution method that we talked about, this method of execution was reserved only for a specific crime. That crime being parricide, or killing a member of your immediate family. So at least it wasn't used on, you know, someone just who was old. It was at least used on a murderer, but still, the question remains. What is the punishment of the sack? Whose sack is being punished? How do they punish the sack? And don't worry, it's at least 100 times worse than any form of cock and ball torture you could imagine. Okay, jokes aside.
Okay, stop with the cocks.
Penalty of the sack
I'm just playing, keep on coming, I love them.
went as follows. Someone would kill their parents, they would get caught, they would get convicted, then they are awaiting execution. Execution day comes, and this is how it plays out. The criminal is first put into either a barrel or a large burlap sack. The
Okay.
person is then told to curl up into a ball, and the bag or barrel that they are in is then either filled with snakes, monkeys, dogs, or chickens. And
What
at
the
that
fuck?
point, the barrel or sack is sealed, and then you are thrown into the water. So not only are you panicking in this small confined space while you are slowly drowning, you're also in there with a wild animal. Which, first of all, what did the animal do? What did this chicken snake, what did they do? They didn't do anything.
What the
That's
fuck?
just friendly fire. Imagine just being a chicken and getting caught in the crossfire because this guy killed his parents. Regardless, in ancient Rome, drowning was simply not enough. That's wild. Medieval Europe.
Medieval
Rat
Europe.
torture. This method was pretty widely spread across all of Europe during the medieval era, so I'm just doing the region, not even the country. They were all guilty. Rat torture is definitely one of the
Oh,
most
I've heard
famous
about that.
and one of the most brutal methods of execution likely ever used. And for that reason, you may already be familiar with this method. So I'll keep it brief. This method was used on any range of criminals, and although the method was considered torture, it essentially had a 99.99% fatality.
Oh, shit.
Here's how it would work. You would be walked into the execution chamber, the dungeon, you know, the medieval places where people died. And you would be strapped down. Once strapped down, you would have a rat placed typically on your stomach. And on top of that rat, they would place a small cage firmly on top of your stomach,
Ah,
trapping the
shit.
rat onto your body. And now you officially have a pet rat. But unfortunately, this isn't the end of the torture method, as once this cage was secured to your body, the executioner would begin to apply typically heat to the rat to make it uncomfortable and force it to try to find a way out of this cage. And of course, it can't get through the metal cage, however, it could possibly burrow down. And that's exactly what would happen. This rat would begin to burrow and eat and scratch and claw through the person's body, typically going directly into their intestines, causing an excruciating and brutal experience that would typically not instantly kill you, but cause a slow, excruciating, painful death in anywhere from a few hours to even a few days in some cases. This death was typically brought on by a loss of blood or disease. And it's really as simple as that. I can't think of many things more brutal than having rats forced to burrow through your body while you're still alive. And yet, there's still one final entry on this list.
I wonder what it's going to be.
England. Drawing and quartering.
What's
For the
this?
final entry on this list, I knew there was only one suitable entry, that being drawing and quartering. Primarily because it's not even a single execution method. It is a combination of 3 used sequentially. And they intentionally keep you alive during the initial, I guess not even executions, just torture methods until they ultimately kill you. Drawing and quartering was reserved specifically for traitors. And this method was supremely brutal
This
because they
motherfucker.
wanted to set a very strong example that if you were a traitor, that the consequences were above all else. And interestingly, this method of execution was actually so brutal that they didn't even do it on women. They only did it on men. This rule was in place because, spoiler alert, the men would be naked during part of this execution, and they figured it would be too indecent to do that to women. So instead, women only got beheaded or burned at the stake, which, as brutal as those are, they seem like child's play compared to drawing and quartering. So let's say you commit treason in medieval England. What exactly happens?
Imagine
First,
that shit.
you are removed from your jail cell and dragged by horse from the prison to the gallows. At that point, you are put on the gallows and hung. But not fully. You are only hung until you are half dead. Once the executioner feels that you are sufficiently hung, you are cut down. Once you are cut down, you are literally disemboweled, with the executioner removing your organs out of your body. And then the executioner will set your organs on fire. At that point, you are then beheaded. And then once you are beheaded, all 4 of your limbs are attached to separate horses. And
What the fuck you gotta do to get this shit?
And that is the long and short of drawing and quartering. And there was kind of variations on how this kind of happened, but this was the head honcho of all of the techniques used. Initially, I actually planned on putting tearing apart by animals on the list, because that alone is an extremely brutal method of execution. But once I learned about drawing and quartering, I realized that I had to save being torn apart by any animal for the method that included that, along with 3 other literal execution methods. It's probably one of the most brutal execution methods of all time. It was
What
extremely
the
popular
fuck?
during medieval times, and was only abolished in the 19th century, which isn't super recent, but not super long ago either. But there you have it. The next time you're hanging out with your friends, ask them, hey, what would your guys' last meal be? And once everybody's discussing what their favorite foods are and what they would eat if they could only have one more meal, tell them, hey, how would you guys want to be executed? I know some ways that you wouldn't want to be executed, and then you can just...
No, that was a good video. Let's see. Do one more video. See how it is. Watch a friend video. Alright, you know what?
Co-producer is gonna give you.
Shut up. Alright. I think I'm gonna end it there. You know, nice little stream. It was good. It was a nice stream. I felt like I don't know, it was pretty good. I liked the reactions. It was pretty good. The videos were good. But if y'all had any suggestions on any videos, there's a Discord I made. I could put it in my link in my Twitch, so y'all could suggest some videos. And yeah, I mean, I would love for y'all to suggest videos that y'all like personally. So just put some suggestions in the chat or in the Discord. My bad. But see y'all.